Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 60 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. Today we are joined by a special guest, Tim Isenman, iOS developer, app developer, and entrepreneur.
On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random stuff.
Here are this week's top news highlights.
Japan Prime Minister Suga's Tokyo Olympic reception scrapped.
Fukushima farmers hoping for boost from French chefs' endorsements.
Tokyo Metro's Hanzomon Line unveils new 18,000 series train. This week in Japan.
All right, here's our top news item for this week. Japan Prime Minister Suga's Tokyo Olympic reception scrapped.
Kyodo News has reported that a reception for overseas dignitaries scheduled to be hosted by Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga on August 8th, the day of the Tokyo Olympic closing ceremony, will be canceled.
Cancelled. The reception at a Tokyo hotel was also expected to be attended by officials of the International Olympic Committee, but it will be scrapped due to concern over potential coronavirus infections as part of efforts to cut costs and scale down the games, said officials who spoke on condition of anonymity.
Japanese officials apparently made the decision to cancel the event because a large section of the public is critical of the Prime Minister's push to hold the games amid the pandemic.
Uh-oh. The Japanese government and the organizing committee have been working to streamline the Olympics and Paralympics since they were postponed in March last year due to the global health crisis.
The IOC has already abandoned its plan to hold a large ceremony at Tokyo's National Theater prior to the official opening of the Olympics on July 23rd.
The Tokyo Games are likely to see as many as 78,000 officials and staff from overseas, less than half the initially planned 180,000, but the Japanese organizers are seeking to further reduce this number.
So it looks like we're going forward with the games, huh?
Uh-oh.
Do you think we're going to see like a bunch of cancellations of random stuff and then boom, the games are canceled?
I'm not so sure about that, but things are not looking so great for the Olympics these days.
All right, and up next, Fukushima farmers hoping for boost from French chefs' endorsements.
Kyodo News has also reported that a recent tour of Fukushima farms by two top Japan-based French chefs has raised hopes that they will help the prefecture find new markets for its agricultural produce and overcome consumer hesitancy still lingering in the aftermath of the 2011 nuclear disaster.
This is fantastic. It's sweet when boiled and piquant when uncooked. Excellent either way, said Dominic Corby, 55, as he tasted a cabbage head at the Shirashi farm in Iwaki, operated by Nagatoshi Shirashi in late March.
The cabbage would be perfect for making a farci stuffed with pork, mused Corby, who served as head chef at top restaurants in Paris and Tokyo before opening his own restaurant in the Shimbashi commercial district of central Tokyo.
The visits by Corby and pâtissier Jean-Sebastian Clappy, 39, were jointly arranged by Eat and Energize the East, an association of businesses supporting farmers and food producers in Japan's northeast Tohoku region, and a nonprofit called Entrepreneurial Training for Innovative Communities.
The innovation, we can feel it. During the tour, Corby and Clappy swapped ideas with farmers about how to use their produce. The farmers welcomed the exchange. Masato Goto, 41, president of Mine Primal Company in Motomiya, Fukushima, a rice farm, said that, "We would like to make the high quality of our rice widely known and expand our horizons."
So these chefs are based in Japan, as we said, right?
Yes, and they're Swedish chefs with flappy heads.
French.
Yeah, Clappy. Oh, Clappy. Hey, Clappy, come look at this cabbage.
Looks good. Can we test it for radiation? Up next, Tokyo Metro's Hanzomon Line unveils new 18,000 series train.
The Mainichi has reported that a new 18,000 series train set to operate on Tokyo Metro's Hanzomon Line was unveiled to the media at a depot in this city's near Tokyo on June the 2nd.
Tokyo Metro plans to start replacing its 8,000 series trains, which have been in service since 1981, with the new model cars from August and complete their introduction by fiscal year 2025.
The new model has headlights that fit smoothly within the contour of the body, while seats and grab handles are a standardized purple. That's right, folks, purple, that purple drink, matching the color of the railway line, which is also purple. The exterior is lined with two shades of purple that are more bluish than that on present cars, kind of like a Cadillac. The seats are wider, while antiviral and antibacterial treated fabrics are used, in addition to purple.
Spaces that can be used by people using wheelchairs and strollers are available, and the level difference between the floor of the cars and the platform has been reduced, making it easier for children and the elderly to get on and off. In terms of safety, the new model introduces a remote-controlled system that can check the state of the train in operation, and security cameras are installed inside.
That's some serious purple technology. A Tokyo Metro spokesperson commented, the new model's main feature is the barrier-free design, which meets a variety of needs. We hope that the train will be loved by passengers in various ways, and that passengers can use it with a purple peace of mind.
So I think this is one area we can really applaud Japan and the Japanese government on. I mean, meanwhile in the US, we have huge infrastructural problems, right? I mean, like certain highways are just defunct. We can't use them anymore. We're talking about revamping a system that was made in Japan in the 80s. Now, even better, right? I mean, that's pretty awesome.
And it's purple.
That too.
Yes, sir. And up next, we have a special interview with Tim Isenman, iOS developer, app developer, and entrepreneur.
You're now listening to Tokyo Wave.
Tim Isenman is an engineer and product designer from Los Angeles. His past work includes stints in film and TV, where he worked on a feature film called Red State, written and directed by Kevin Smith of the Jay and Silent Bob duo, and the reboot of Carl Sagan's Cosmos TV show on Fox, hosted by Neil deGrasse Tyson.
The majority of Tim's career was spent designing and producing features on the PC game League of Legends, produced by Riot Games. Now, Tim is best known for his work in creating an iOS app called Pocket Rocket that tracks SpaceX's rocket launches and rocket development.
Tim, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Tim, you have such an awesome background. But I think we have to start off with the big question we ask all of our guests here, which is, what brought you to Japan originally?
The first time I came here was about 6 years ago for a business trip. I was still working at Riot. Our game is like a competitive, like team-based PC game, so we have tournaments for it. And one year, I think it was in 2015. We had our world championship for it in Korea, and the company at the time was incredibly successful, and so we had like a yearly trip that we would take as a company, and so they decided to fly everybody from across the world, all 1,700 people, to Korea for a week to meet and hang out in Seoul, and then watch the world championship. And because they could kind of see like we were never going to logistically be able to pull this off again, they were like, we really want you to just take a week before the trip or a week after the business stuff and just go somewhere. We'll fly you to Korea. If you want to take a plane anywhere else adjacent to Korea, just go ahead, because we're never going to do this again. So my friends and I decided to come to Japan, and having been, gamers and cartoon lovers and Pokemon lovers and players for, our entire lives. When all of us got here, we were like, holy shit, this looks like everything that we've ever dreamed it was. And it was like the best week of our lives. And I hadn't been able to come back for, like maybe 4 years. And I was living in San Francisco and kind of just hating everything that I was doing there. I hated my job. I hated San Francisco itself. All of my friends were back in LA, still working for Riot. So I wanted to just bail and go somewhere that I know I really loved. So I took a week, or what was initially going to be a week, and came to Tokyo to try to learn about the robotics industry out here, to try to get away from the sort of technology that San Francisco seemed to only offer, which was like mostly marketing tech, kind of like soul-sucking stuff. But when I got here, I didn't learn shit about robotics. I just kept eating and going to cafes and enjoying a much nicer life than I'd experienced back home. And I extended that 1 week to 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks to 3. And then eventually I was here for an entire month. And I had to go back for a dentist appointment, of all things. And when I got back to the United States, I was like, what am I doing here? I don't have anything here anymore. So I sold everything that I technically had, like my, TV and bed and whatnot, and then bought a one-way ticket to Japan and, said, well, I had no plan, but I said, I'll figure it out when I get there. So I came out here really just to kind of live a way that, allowed me to be happy, which was kind of just like two parts: waking up in Tokyo, and then building stuff here. So that became part of the way that I live now, with the engineering shit that I do.
So we heard that you were previously working for a large game company. What was that experience like?
Like working on the game, or working for the company itself, or what specifically?
Well, as we mentioned in your bio, and maybe some of our listeners are like, whoa, you were working on League of Legends.
Right.
Is that like the biggest online game ever?
It was. And then Fortnite came along and just toppled everybody. At one of its peaks, it's actually surpassed it now, but there was about 100 million concurrent monthly users on PC playing League of Legends. And that was right after I left. So it was like a massive, massive game, and it's even larger than that now.
But yeah, so back to Parker's question, like, what was it like working for this massive company that really made, like, as you said at the time, like the biggest online multiplayer game in the world?
Oh, sure, yeah. So when I first joined it, I was just kind of this lowly kid, coming off of working on Cosmos, trying to get like a temp job while I waited for the next like TV show to kind of crop up and start working on that. So I joined Riot as a facilities assistant, which meant like cleaning the kitchens and building desks and clearing out like cardboard boxes from the floor that had, people's Amazon packages in them, and just, maintaining the sanitization of the office, and then going home. And the company at the time was like, 325 people. And I didn't know anything about the game, but I had played its like predecessors back when I was a teenager, like World of Warcraft, or Warcraft Frozen Throne rather. And being there after working in film, even doing like that stuff, like, cleaning the kitchens and restocking the coffee, was vastly more fun and gratifying than working in film ever was. The people were just so much nicer. It was an incredibly, collaborative environment and fun place to be. So it was like a dream come true when I was, like a 20-year-old kid just coming off of like a TV, production room, which was kind of like a closet with like a picnic table in it where, people would bark stuff at me all day to get like this script ready for the directors to review. So back then, it was kind of like a miracle of a job that then, turned into this full-time job where I was, they just kept asking me to come back. And they had known that I had worked in like TV and film production. So they're like, look, we know you can do more than just clean our kitchens. Do you want to help us make the game? And, you know, they kind of like took me, you know, from sort of like the streets, and were just like, here is a career, take it if you want it. I obviously did. And I really loved it. It was incredibly intense and difficult because, you know, making something of that scale and that complexity is not even remotely close to easy.
Yeah, so basically you were working on this massive game on the product development side, and that, of course, is one side of the coin. But then you moved into the development side, and of course you weren't working on that game because that obviously was sort of out of your pay grade at that time. But how did you start making that transition?
I began doing products or engineering stuff when I left Riot and moved up to the Bay Area in an attempt to work in venture capital, actually. I had thought that the next evolution of my own skill as sort of a strategist and a person who designs features and works with a team to build them was moving into the company strategy, like in what companies deserve to or should or should not exist. But it turns out, you know, I hated that even more than film, because the only thing that you do there is look at a resume of an entrepreneur and the team of people working with them to build this seemingly really incredible thing. And you not arbitrarily, but what feels like arbitrarily say, oh yes, we should invest in this thing versus we should not. And it's all a guess, you know, so you're never perfectly clear about whether a thing should be, you know, an investment or not. So I was looking at it thinking, I have no talent in this. There's like nothing that says like, I know better than any of these people what should or should not exist. But I really wish that I was the one people were evaluating doing some cool thing. So I left the stuff that I was doing in venture capital and decided that I would go back into product, and while doing that, teach myself engineering. So I worked for 2 other startups in the Bay Area, really did not like them either. And it was at the end of one of those jobs that I said, okay, I'm never doing product again. I am going to learn engineering, or I'm just going to have a busted career. So I kind of gave myself no fallback, and then took a couple months off and just did nothing but iOS development. And part of that learning experience was building a prototype of an app that I could show to this course that I was paying to, you know, give me like their videos to watch and teach myself development. And that demo app that I made was Pocket Rocket.
So this is such an inspiring and really story with such humble beginnings. I mean, so you started in film and TV. You got an offer from Riot Games to literally clean the kitchen. Then they offered you a career. And then from that, you pivoted and started teaching yourself engineering, and then jumped into your own product. That's just really very inspiring. How was the transition going into Pocket Rocket, and what kind of inspired you to create Pocket Rocket in the first place?
The switch was actually, I think, easier for me coming from the strategy point of view into engineering, because I had spent 6 years before that figuring out how to help teams build stuff. So all I needed to do was kind of take that toolkit that I had agonized over to sharpen, and then apply it to things that I wanted to do, which was kind of the whole point. I was tired of like having what I thought were good ideas and then having to rely on other people to help me make them. I had seen like a couple opportunities that I thought would be good kind of go right by me and then be developed by bigger companies. The only thing that I had to really figure out was, once I have an idea, how do I gather the right technologies to actually execute on it? So luckily for me, I was starting in iOS, and not something like web or data science, which I think, at least in like a mental model for me, are much more elusive, and I can't really imagine how to, make like a pure application out of something like Python, or I don't give a shit about websites. So I had no idea what I would do with like HTML or JavaScript. But, I'm a massive fan of Apple products. So I figured if I at least start with that, then I'm starting with functionality and behavior that I've used since like the dawn of the iPhone. So if I can see in code the thing, like the analogs of what I'm doing with my thumbs or have been doing with my thumbs, then it will be much clearer to me how to use that code and that technology to make something like an iOS app. So when I eventually figured out the kind of bread and butter of making an app and what the very basics of it are, I could then just say, all right, now I know how to both identify problems, figure out how to create broad or general solutions for them, like the idea of a solution. Now I just have to sort of design it and then build that design. So with programming, one of the things I realized is that what you as an engineer are often doing is you're finding information, and then you're collecting that information, or you're in a computer, and that computer can be one that fits in your pocket, like your phone, and then you're kind of lumping it into lists. And then in each one of those lists, you're either manipulating the data in that list, or you're moving that between like views. So when you like move into a new page of an app, or like from like the homepage to a settings page, those are just different views, and so they have different permissions to that data or that information. So what you're doing is just sort of saying, okay, I have this information here. How do I get it here to this new spot? It was just on me then to take those fundamentals and apply them to some design that I had. So I found this body of data that described all of SpaceX's activity, and it was just in like a list of other data sources. There's like a shitload of like weather data sources, some that are like I think like traffic or healthcare type stuff. But I grew up loving NASA and everything that they do. And so thus became a fan of SpaceX when they first kind of came onto the scene. And so I, at the time, would spend hours of my life waiting for these launches to happen, which were sometimes at 3 a.m. Back in California. But often I'd miss them because there's, at the time there was zero schedule for them. You would just hear about it either on Twitter, like at a moment's notice, or maybe you would see the live stream pop up on YouTube. And if you had like enough lead time, you could stay up or I could stay up and watch a night launch. But when I'd miss it, I'd be really pissed because this was at the moment where SpaceX was first beginning to land rockets. And so it was this really critical moment in like spaceflight history where they were sending a vehicle to low Earth orbit and then bringing it back, and somehow, landing this thing that's the size of a 21-story building onto a floating like football field. They have these like autonomous barges that, sail out to the middle of the Atlantic to literally catch this 21-story building-sized object flying back from the atmosphere,
from outer fucking space.
Yeah, it would blow my mind every single time. So I never wanted to miss the first time that they landed the rocket, and luckily I didn't. And that was really like one of the most like chilling moments that I think I've ever experienced in my life.
And Pocket Rocket has a really cool tagline: "Never miss another launch." And that's really important because that is also the app's brand promise. And having a clear brand promise for an app makes it that much easier for users to decide that they want to put that app in their phone and use that app. Of course, that's just the beginning. Dealing with unhappy users and user requests can be a nightmare and somewhat of a black hole for developers. How do you deal with maintaining the app while being the solo developer?
Well, I actually have two other people that help me with the app. I have two designers, and one of them is also a really talented engineer. One designer is Kimi Talviti in Finland, and I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I've never actually heard him say his last name, but he and I met on Twitter, and he's this true master of creating like rocket models and renderings of SpaceX rockets and Rocket Lab rockets or ULA. Just he has a massive library of things that he's worked on. He will help me with a lot of the artwork for the app, and then Aaron and I've never heard his name spoken out loud either. Abenthalur in occasionally Germany but mostly London is also just this phenomenal app designer or just general designer, and he had a history of iOS development before we met and before he became a full-time designer. So they both helped me, build and maintain this thing, but I am the only one that deals with our customers, and the space crowd is kind of they're very demanding. I think it's sort of a crowd that has like some overlap with gaming, and if you've ever done support for a gaming company, you know that people have really high expectations of what it is that you're giving them and what they deserve or feel entitled to from you. So if there's like one like mote of data that's wrong in the app, I'll get an email from someone saying, "Hey, what the fuck? This the weight of this thing is off by 10 kilograms." And I'm like, look, it's not a big deal. That thing happened like 5 years ago.
Listen, punk, I want you to take a scale and a ruler and go measure that fucking rocket right now.
Yeah, the only times that people get like truly mad at me are when they they are an Android user and they realize that the app is an iOS exclusive. Then I'll get emails saying things like, "Pretty things are ephemeral. If you really want to test your mettle as an engineer, develop for Android. Go fuck yourself. Have a nice day."
Oh my god!
I'm not kidding you. That was a real email.
Whoa!
Yeah,
whoa.
that was
The hate is
that was
real.
when we launched. That was one of the greatest things I'd ever received. So I'm hoping to frame that eventually.
That's great.
I mean, I think it comes with the territory. You become an app developer and you get the nastiest hate mail you could ever imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectation that people have around software and especially mobile apps being free. I think like the paradigm of things like any of like Facebook's products where they're like, "Hey, come take this thing and we'll take some stuff from you, but we're not going to tell you what."
I paid $5 for this app and it sucks.
Yeah, so when people do have to pay, even if it's like a really small amount, like our app is like $4 in USD, and you think about the value that you get for that $4 over time, the value is fucking massive. But if you go and you pay for the shittiest cup of coffee, and it's maybe like $5 or $6, you drink it once, you hate it, you eventually expel it from your body, and that's it. That's the lifetime of that thing. Maybe you use the sugar calories to like get upset about it and write like a nasty tweet to some app developer. But you get this one tool, from the App Store, and you pay, what even like the lowest earning person in the US, like a third of what they'll make, in an hour in some places. And you have that potentially for the rest of your life. And it's never going to change as long as the data exists. And yet, people will look at that price tag and be like, "Oh, your app is a fucking scam. How dare you charge me for this thing?" And it's like, I made it. Like, I took a lot of time and really painful time to make this thing. And guess what? I've got rent. Like, I can't take your shitty tweet to my landlord and say, "Oh, look, this guy didn't want to pay, but are you cool with like the printout of this guy's tweet? He's really adamant that like he should get this thing for free. Can I trade this?
He just wants his $5 back. I mean, come on.
It's an NFT. It's going to be worth something someday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Japan is the land of video games, and there's something to be said about having the gravitas to make apps and even games in Japan. I'm sure the competition is fierce, but it might also not be that bad. It might be more relaxed. What is it like in reality?
Well, there's like a couple apps that do, what we do of like, they take launch data and then they show it to you in sort of like a calendar, like a glorified calendar, to give you a heads up for when these things are happening. So before we launched, there was this, there was about 4 or 5 of them, and they kind of followed this unfortunate motif where anything that was made for or around space just like frankly looked like shit. It looked like an Excel sheet that someone had shoved into an iOS app. There just was no like artistic integrity or intention behind what they were doing other than putting in this text that represented, a date and a name of a launch, and occasionally an image of a rocket. But the things that happen in the space community are these like mind-bendingly impressive feats of engineering, and design. But no one had taken the sort of respect of modern app development and modern design principles and put them into an app that is like an homage to the work of the space industry. So, when my designer and I realized this, we wanted to make something that we thought was worthy of the work that people at NASA or JPL or SpaceX do. So we looked at some of the stuff of like the design principles of like Tesla and SpaceX itself, and we tried to employ them in the app to make something that looked so good that nobody could really make a comparison with any other app that was on the market. The other ones are free, but we thought like if we make it look good enough, then that's going to be more than enough justification for someone to buy the app. And we also have the benefit of having 3D versions, the 3D models of the rockets in the app too, that you could see in like augmented reality. So you can like put them on your floor or on your table in front of you, and spin them around and see the engineering makeup of the vehicle. Where any other media about the launches or these companies is purely 2D. So you see like the photography of the launches, but if you're not in Florida or in Texas, you're not going to understand like just how giant these structures are. So we wanted to give people the ability to see and appreciate the magnitude of the engineering of the rockets. So we let people scale them up to a 1-to-1 life-size ratio. And when they do, they tower over everything in sight. And they can give you this like really jaw-dropping experience. And since we launched, people were, I think, kind of caught on. We're like, oh fuck, you can put like good design around this stuff because it already is cool. All you have to do is think, how can I honor how cool it is already? And so there's a couple apps that do a pretty good job. They don't have the talent of Kimmy with them, luckily. He's only with us. So nobody else has 3D rockets. So we get the benefit of that, but all the other ones are free. So sometimes the people who are particularly upset about paying any amount of money will give me the finger and then go and download one of those. And sometimes like I'll direct them to it. If they're super upset, I'll be like, look, that's nice. I'm sorry that you don't think that an exchange of goods for services is warranted here. here are some people that can serve you better. I pity them in their rent, but if you want my stuff, then let's talk about price.
Japan gets a lot of flack for wonky UI and buggy performance.
Yeah.
But do you see the software development scene changing here in Japan, and maybe more native Japanese, actively pursuing this field?
There are certainly small changes happening, but where I think some people are beginning to catch on to the idea that software can be an alternative to the more corporate lifestyle that is more common out here. But I still think that there's a large valley between people being able to develop apps and people being able to build companies with software. So I think the software that you'll get is still going to be largely driven by sort of like a middle management culture. So I think there's more software engineers being fostered in Japan, but I don't think there's like a very large cultural wave happening. I think as long as the sort of management structures are the same in Japan, not a lot of progress is going to be made on like a technology front, because the incentives for people to be really excellent and really motivated engineers just aren't here. The pay and the respect culturally for software engineers out here mostly doesn't exist. The adoration that it gets in other countries is totally vacant in Japan. So the things that could drive people to really want to do magnificent things out here, I just don't think exist.
Great point. And it really echoes the sort of issue that Japanese app developers have, in that in order to make a successful app, you really have to be good at a lot of different diverse things. You have to be a jack of all trades. You can't really be too much of a specialist in one distinct specialized area. You really have to bridge the gap between the code and the design and the product development. And having that sort of diverse skill set is difficult and requires time and experience. And it seems like you've been able to do all of those things, which is amazing. One thing, though, you've spoken before about imposter syndrome. Could you define just what this is to our listeners and how you've experienced it and dealt with it?
Yeah. So this, I think the thing with that feeling, and I for me, it's sort of a feeling of comparing myself to anybody else and feeling some sort of inadequacy, So I look at like another engineer on Twitter and I'm like, wow, god damn, they're so productive. How the hell do they write so much code and ship so many apps all the time? And then here I am just like fiddling around with the same thing for the last year and like barely scratching what I think is the surface of the opportunity. If you listen to, I think, anyone who's really accomplished something, like let's say Andre 3000, one of the two godlike rappers from Outkast. That guy has accomplished just about everything that you can as a musician. And, I think if you asked anybody what they think of him, they'd say, oh, well, that guy's a genius, and he's got like one of the sharpest tongues in the world. Musically, some of the most creative talent that's ever existed. And if you listen to an interview with him, he will say that he just feels like a total piece of shit all the time. Like his worst moments were when he was, in his like highest successes. And a lot of this stuff like comes from him similarly feeling like some emotion of like or observing some feeling of like inadequacy, or that he's like doing something wrong. So the way that I kind of rationalize it for myself is like, it's just my brain making shit up. Like it's the mind is like a process of chemical reactions, and I'm whatever my thinking self is just the product of them. So I have this, organ in my head that is trying to, self-destruct, but why? Like what's the point of doing that? Like, is there like an evolutionary purpose to having self-esteem? What is it trying to do that was maybe beneficial to the life and death cycle, when we were, much more primitive? I don't know. Is it useful to me now? No. So fuck it. Like, I just don't want to pay attention to it. I still feel it. I can't really avoid that. I can't just like look in the mirror and say, no, dude, you're the shit. But I can think, okay, today's one of those days. I'm going to feel like shit today, but I think tomorrow, the next day, whatever the dice roll is, I'll feel like that then, and I'll deal with it. So I'll eat it right now. I'll just like bathe in this misery, and then maybe something productive will come of it. Maybe I'll write a song, but maybe I'll do nothing because I'm just fucking bummed out. I take it in stride and then let it pass, and hopefully it's gone, but eventually. But sometimes, like, I think it can get confused with a real observation that your mind is making of the delta between what you want versus where you are or what you have. So, back before I had moved out to Japan, I was in a position where, I hated my career. I didn't like the way that I looked physically. I was really bothered that I couldn't do anything cool intellectually, like speak another language or engineer something, from scratch. I could only think of what maybe I could engineer, but not actually do it. And I just felt kind of incompetent on like a number of levels. But, instead of just thinking, oh, well, too bad I feel like that today, that was kind of like a more permanent feeling. I instead, looked at that and was like, okay, well, these are clearly things that I don't like about myself and my life right now. So why don't I just say, okay, if I don't like the way I look, then let's change that. That one's pretty easy. Just diet and exercise like a motherfucker until, something changes. And if I don't like that I'm not an engineer, then I'll become an engineer. I just have to set up the structure for myself to learn that thing or become that thing. And, I went through like a very kind of brutal method of that, of like creating the no fallback sort of thing, where either I do it or like I start back in facilities again and start cleaning the kitchens of some other video game studio.
Spick and span.
Yeah, I cleaned the shit out of that place. They loved me back then, but then I wanted to do things like speak other languages too. So living in Japan was a pretty convenient way for me to do that. So sometimes, it's just like gap analysis. Like where do I feel like I should be as a person? And if I don't feel like that right now, then let's take an honest look at, where I am and do something about it. So it can be like this really useful thing too. Lately, it's I feel just more like a total dumbass, because engineering will put you through these like highs and lows of feeling like a genius and then feeling like a total moron the next day. But that itself is just like the life of an engineer. So I don't have the same sort of insecurities now, luckily. But if I feel like I'm out of place somewhere and I'm inadequate compared to somebody else, I think, well, they probably feel like shit too. They might be looking at me and thinking, oh man, I wish I had Tim's glasses. Those things are the shit. Or I wish I made rocket apps instead of this like dope finance app, or something. Everyone has, things that they hate about their life because life is just fucking hard. So I just, try to acknowledge that like, it's not just me. Everybody feels like shit. The best people feel like shit. It's just the brain doing something to itself for who, like, God knows why, and maybe tomorrow will be better.
Inspirational.
Very much so. When you told people you wanted to go to Japan, or when you told people I'm making this new app, did you have like a bunch of people say, "Oh, that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't do that"?
Oh, of course, yeah. It was mostly like with the app stuff. When I told people that I was going to charge for it, they're like, "Oh, dude, no one's going to buy an app," and I'm like, "Fuck you. They'll buy my app."
Great attitude. I love that. Yeah.
$5 whole.
Yeah. Because then what we were doing that was like a little bit different was we were charging for it up front, but then we were also putting in a subscription service. So, there's like a couple different payment models where the most common one is freemium, which is where you download it for free and then you pay for additional features and services in like some subscription or some in-app purchase. But then mine is the opposite end, where it's Paymium, where you pay and then you get the premium within the app too. So it's on like the very furthest end of the spectrum of like where people are generally going to be willing to pay for an app. But I was pretty confident in what the value proposition of the app was when we were launching, and frankly, like I was going broke, trying to like set up my life in Japan, and I needed to have like a stronger means of income around the time that we launched the app, because I was running out of money making the app itself. Mm-hmm. And it was about a year ago, last month, or a year ago, April. So about 14 months ago, that we launched. And at that month was my last month of using being able to use my own money to pay for rent or utilities before having to like use loans from my friends to stay afloat. So we launched, and luckily, my intuitions about what people were going to be willing to pay for were right. And we had a shitload of people initially download the app and give me, several months of runway to be able to continue living out here and building a reputation as an engineer that could either build apps for other people as a freelancer or join a team properly to have a full-time job.
No, this is just so inspirational. I mean, did the app go to #1 on the App Store?
In the month that we launched, we got to #1 in entertainment.
Wow.
Yeah, in the US. I think maybe in Europe too. So that was in the paid apps for entertainment, and we got to number, I think, 16. I always mix up if it was 12 or 16. I think it was 12. No, 16. In the top paid apps overall. So across all categories, we were in the top 20 in the first month. So against, like the big dogs, our little Rocket app was up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition.
Yeah. Luckily, so one of the ways that I was socializing the app while we were still building it was kind of reaching as deep into the space community as I could, and just tell people, hey, you like watching these apps, these launches? Me too. Here's an app that I'm making to help you do that. You miss them? Yeah, I miss them too. But hey, guess what? This thing will notify you when one's about to happen, and it has like the full schedule of when they're happening. So here, let me solve your problem. And some of those people happen to be, prominent members of like the space community. And some of them were also like journalists at places like 9to5Mac. So when I told them like we're approaching the debut of the app, they're like, oh, well, let me know the date and I'll write an article about it for 9to5Mac. And then another guy was like, let me feature it in one of my YouTube videos. And he's this guy, Marcus House, who makes these fantastic YouTube videos about the broader space industry, where he talks like, I think on a weekly cadence about all the happenings. And he's got these like fantastic visualizations of things and breakdowns of what people are doing and what the implications might be, etc. So he just gave us this like free 4-minute window in one of his videos, and he just talked this shit out of the app. He's like, look at how beautiful this thing is. Look at these amazing animations. Look at all this stuff. And the vast majority of our success came from his audience, because they were like, oh, wow, this guy is not creating an ad, on his video. It's not a paid promotion. He started by just saying like, look, this is not a thing that I'm doing because I'm getting paid to do it. I'm crazy about this application, and it's just arrived for you to be able to access it too. And I feel a need to tell you about it. And the people that, pay attention to him were like, oh, wow, this sounds sincere. So they went and downloaded the app in droves. And that single-handedly was the making of like our audience. And we've grown in like steps and increments from there. But I would have been back in the US broken, sitting on my ass, if it were not for Marcus House's help specifically.
And so it was like this aha moment where you have this app, you're going to launch it, and you need to promote it. And the promotions just started rolling in, and you took off and flew into space.
Yeah. We got incredibly lucky. If I hadn't, bumped into him on Twitter by happenstance, or if we hadn't like met Kimmy, whose work is also beloved in the space community, who I think is like the connection between myself and Marcus, where I think Kimmy has like made models or renderings for Marcus's videos before. And so when Kimmy had like tweeted something about it, I think that's where, Marcus saw us, and I reached out to him from there. But, someone on Twitter again had introduced me to Kimmy, and I don't even remember how I was introduced to that guy, but he's like this AR engineer at Apple. And
who just so happens to make these awesome, incredibly detailed 3D models of rockets.
Yeah, so he saw the earliest prototype of the app, and we had these like placeholder models, which were just these like long rectangular shapes. They looked like gray loaves of bread, spinning in each position where a rocket would be. And he's like, what do you mean? Are you making a game or something? What the fuck is that? And I'm like, no, it's an app. This is supposed to be rockets. And he's like, oh, well, if you want rockets, like check this guy out over here. This guy's the shit. And I did. And, that guy was not wrong. Like Kimmy is, I think hands down the best in the community. So it all was like a series of like, Jesus Christ, like, how do I keep getting so lucky with this? A couple times, like it's happened where I've been in a good place at the right time, and if it feels like the sort of current is pushing me in like a specific direction, then I'll just sort of paddle with it. We're not like millionaires or anything from the app, but we've certainly given some amount of people who love this stuff something that they now can own and really love themselves. And that to me is kind of like, the real magic of it all is just like a couple of things coalesce to allow me to give people something that they really give a shit about. And, I really care about making it. So, I get to live in this nice dynamic of people caring about something very deeply, that I also care about, but where I am in the driver's seat for how to give them the stuff that can multiply that love for them of rocket flight or of SpaceX itself.
Wow. Yeah, it just sounds like so many serendipitous events that helped lead to this. And, a lot of like psychologists and what do you call them? Motivational speakers talk about this kind of like mindset, right? It sounds like you had this like mindset and you were so driven, and all these, these things just, like you said, the current, just go with the flow, and it all came to you.
Yeah. I mean, there's some amount of intervening certainly too, where I wish it were as easy as me just like literally paddling with a current, but at the same time, like most of I think most of things in regards to like engineering or entrepreneurship, or literally building anything, you know, if you see a person and they've built something, you should applaud them and not take a shit on whatever they built, because making anything is hard as hell. So a lot of it, while things were certainly going well in some areas, like meeting people and getting certain things, or enabling certain things to happen, the majority of it is suffering, you know, where I'm clawing at the reality of either technology not working in my favor, or my brain just being too weak to figure out how to make the technology work in my favor, or running out of money, going through a shitty breakup, you know, in the middle of this all, and then a fucking pandemic hitting that, you know, locked me inside and away from anybody that I could work with in person to do something, or even celebrate with. You know, when we launched, it was a month into the pandemic, and I couldn't even fucking go outside and high five anybody. You know, I was just like I was literally jumping up and down in my apartment, waking up in the morning and seeing our position on the App Store rankings, but then being like, what the fuck? Like, I want to hug my best friend right now, you know, or I want to like go and take a massive shot of sake or something. There's no break out the champagne moment, because
there wasn't. Yeah, a lockdown.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
For the most part, there hasn't been too. It's kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop for a long time. But you know, so there was like a lot of feeling of defeat during the process that eventually got to the one convergence of all good things to a feeling of like victory. But, you know, after victory, the game is still playing. You know, entrepreneurship is not like a one round thing, especially when you're creating a service. It's like a marathon that lasts kind of until you die, or until like you run out of, you're out of business. And luckily, you know, I'm still alive and we're not out of business yet. So it's still going, and it's still hard, you know, especially when none of us are on this thing full time. So as like the person who's the creator of this thing and really like the steward of it, I have to, you know, drag this thing in whatever direction I want it to go. And that's, you know, like galvanizing the will of people who are not physically next to me. You know, I have to try to convince my designer, whose talents are demanded by some of the like Fortune 500 companies of the world, to make things for them, and try to make progress on this little app that, you know, tracks rockets.
Come on, we're gonna track the rockets better.
Yeah, and
please?
we're certainly doing that. And I'm, you know, learning like new engineering techniques all the time to make stuff that can let us be more autonomous. And from the people who create the data, which is like a community of space fans on Reddit. We just, you know, pull whatever they compile together, and shove it into an app in like some elegant fonts. But we're, you know, doing a lot of stuff to have more control over the data that goes into the app, so that people write us less angry emails. But you know, that and updating the design of the app to keep pushing further and further ahead of anyone that, you know, sees what you can do around designing for space stuff. We want to be so far ahead that, you know, people just look at it and think, oh, well, Jesus Christ, like there's no way that I'll ever catch up to that. But, you know, getting there takes a lot of effort and a lot of thinking that is, you know, pretty fucking hard, and often really painful, because you know what you want, but you don't know how to get it.
Well, I think with the Pocket Rocket app, you've really pushed some design barriers, and you started with this very simple concept, but you were able to use design and also really follow the best practices of iOS app development to where you really do have the best app out there, as far as it's got widgets, it's got 3D, it's got AR. And it really has everything that you would expect from this kind of app, and then some, because you just won't stop making it better. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, well, some of that stuff is like, I think at the time when we were launching, stuff that I think people did not expect to be in the app, but now that they exist, you can have the ability to think like, oh well, now that I know that you can do this, give me this other stuff, so it lets people have these like branch out from having maybe no expectation for what should be like covering the space industry, to then thinking, oh man, well, I wish I could take the models that are in your app and then see a simulated launch from them. So, we're trying to do that now. And that's hard as hell.
Yeah.
But it's possible, anything's possible. We just have to figure out how to do it. And the real trick is you have this this conceit that you have some information. And if you generalize, information, that can be used, leveraged for a bunch of other types of information. So we have like names of rockets, we have concepts for what or designs for what the 3-dimensional states of these rockets are. But how do we use that information to really surprise people? So I think any good app or any good product figures out a way to take some information and then do something surprising with it. But figuring out what that is incredibly hard, and it takes a lot of time because genius takes time. And I'm not saying that we have any amount of genius, but the lead designer at Riot, the lead game designer, said that to one of my bosses in passing one time.
Yeah.
Genius takes time, man.
Yeah, because the guy was like, my boss was like, hey, where the fuck's the design for this new game? And then he's like, genius takes time. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So it does.
Look at the brain on bread.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Pocket Rocket so far has been a huge success, at least by any...
like traditional app standard?
Yeah, traditional app standards. I mean, you really went above and beyond what people were expecting to get from their $5 investment. But that's not all for yourself, for your company, and the future of what you're wanting to do in the app development space. What's next? What do you plan on doing after Pocket Rocket? Are there any new projects that you'd like to shout out?
Well, the one that I'm working full-time on right now, I don't want to talk about it yet because it's too premature. But I'm hoping that it'll be useful for the people that we're making it for. But for Pocket Rocket, we're working on sort of the second evolution of it, where we know that there are limitations to the app and what we want to do and can do with it easily, because of the way that we built it. It's sort of like we built something fast because I was about to go broke, and then it did what we wanted it to do at the time, but now we want it to do way more. But it's difficult in the technical architecture of the app now because it's really laborious. Some of the technology is outdated, where there are things that we can use now that allow us to develop much faster, that are more performant. Like the app right now is this massive file of like a couple hundred megabytes, which it hits over the limit of like Apple allowing you to download it over cellular without prompting you like, hey, do you really want to waste all your data downloading this app?
Yeah.
But we know how we can make it much smaller and then faster when someone's using it and feel snappier. But some of the design too has just aged. I mean, when I look at like one of the detail pages of each launch, I'm like, oh fuck, there's so much opportunity that we're not taking advantage of. But that one was really like the one that came in under the wire, and that was the last thing that we were making in the app to be able to ship it. And I was putting a lot of pressure on my designer, like, hey dude, you have to fucking finish this thing. I am about to have no money. So we have to launch right now. And, you know, I felt so bad at the time because he's like, look, I have this thing that I think works well. But you know, I don't know if it's perfect. And, you know, he showed it to me and I'm like, I don't think that it's perfect. Where everything else, I was like, you know, the hand of God crafted this thing. And he's like, I mean, maybe I'm just an idiot, but like, I can't crack it any better than this. And, you know, I started to use it more and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, I think my first impressions are more negative than in reality, because it was like, we had this one design that I really liked. And then we pivoted from there because it had a lot of like, sort of design architecture or like design language and information architecture flaws that we just really couldn't grapple with. And once I started to use the thing that he made, I'm like, okay, I do like it. It does do a lot of cool shit. But now, you know, as like the dust has settled and you know, become, you know, more like a fossil, I'm looking at most of the app with fresh eyes and thinking we should be doing way more to like give people more information about either SpaceX itself or other launch providers. You know, there's other companies doing cool shit with rockets that are not, you know, led by Elon Musk. And people do want this. Like they email me and say, why do you only do SpaceX? Where's ULA? Where's Rocket Lab? Where's so-and-so? And I'm like, I don't fucking have I say that in the app description. It's like a SpaceX fan app. But people want it, all the same. So, and I want it too. And I think, honestly, Apple, I think they want it because I don't think they want to promote an app that's only about SpaceX, like an unofficial app. So if there's something that's more just general about space flight itself, I think that they're going to be more willing to say, hey, check out this indie development team that's making this really lovely app. Don't you like it? We like it. Because guess what? It's not about that guy that pisses everybody off. It's about space, you know?
The final frontier, guys. And one thing, I'm looking at the app right now in the App Store is you've been really successful in getting some awesome reviews. I'm looking at the reviews page. You've got a 4.6 out of 5 with 453 ratings.
Right.
And, you know, app reviewers are not the nicest bunch. If they don't like your app, they will give you 0 stars. Yeah. But 4.6 is pretty damn good.
Yeah. So that's a combination of the psychology that I built into the business model of the app, where we're mostly building this for people that I know can pay for it. So the majority of the people that follow us on Twitter, they all say like 3 things in their bio, which is SpaceX, Tesla, Elon Musk. And I'm like, gotcha. Okay. Or sometimes, like, you know, they'll say Apple stuff. So there's like a very consistent aesthetic and lifestyle that these people subscribe to. And frankly, you know, I'm one of them. I just don't say that shit on Twitter. So, you know, if you think about these people who buy Teslas, like, you think they're going to be willing to buy a sexy ass app that is $4 that looks like it was maybe designed by Tesla or SpaceX? Of course. You know, it is an easy purchase for someone who just bought like a car that's over like $100,000 or like sub $100,000.
Bro, could you put my car in the app?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I haven't
reality,
gotten that request yet. But then, you know, on top of just knowing that like the people who are probably the target market for this thing, when I was a product manager working on League of Legends, a lot of my time was spent figuring out like, why do people buy shit? Because I was making the cosmetic content that monetized League of Legends. So a lot of my time as like a strategist for those products was just asking like, what is it about anything that's not like an essential, you know, not like food or water or shelter. What are the motivators behind why someone is making like a purchase decision? And if it's like an aesthetic thing, it's like a subscription or like a broadcasting of this person's personality. And when people buy things, they tend to value them more than if they get them for free. So if I were to just like upload the app for free to the App Store, then you'd be getting a lot of people that are not coming into it with a lot of personal interest or like built-in interest, because they're making a very intentional decision of a purchase. They're not saying to themselves, I want to own this and therefore I'm going to love this. They're just saying, what the fuck is this? Who cares? Fuck you. And then potentially writing like a pretty shitty review. So it's knowing who my customers are, generally having some understanding of why people are going to be buying this thing, and when they are buying it, what they're going to be thinking, either consciously or subconsciously, when they have it, and then treating it as such. Like, I tried to make the rocket models in the app look like they're on like a display case in a museum. They sit in this vacuum of like white space or like gray space, and they rotate gently as if they're like a diamond behind glass, dug up from some ancient ruin, and like polished by the queen herself. So we
do have a fine team of experienced rocket polishers here at the Royal Palace.
Yeah. So I wanted it to feel like this thing that they're buying has some like multiplicative effect on their, like the thing that they're most passionate about, which is either like this sort of futurism, like minimalist futurism, or just, the like Apple products or SpaceX itself, So if we can make this thing that is precious to them, and they are going in with that conceit that like, I am spending money on this thing, it is more valuable intrinsically than something that is exactly the same but free, then the result is that when people do review it, they are pretty glowing reviews. But there's a flip side to that, where some people, when they buy it, the entitlement for what they think they are getting from you is drastically higher than what someone who's downloading it for free might be. And it's, kind of rightfully so. So people will see the payment model and think, I just bought this thing, I'm going to get everything for free. And they come in and we're like, hey, you want notifications about this stuff? Well, guess what? We handwrite them. It's $1 a month. People are like, you're a scam. You're a scam from China. Fuck you. How dare you ask me to pay more money to use your app after I've already paid? And, my response is generally like, well, you didn't read it. You're getting other notifications for free. But if you want these really detailed things that, we manually write and pay attention to, like using our time, that's an opportunity cost for something else, you have to pay for that. And it's $1 a month. Like, you're not even going to know that you're paying for it. And then if you want, you can pay either $5 a month or $9 a month. If you feel like you just really love this thing so much and you have the extra cash, then you can support us and give the app a better chance at surviving long term. So we have these like base tier of like the $1 a month thing. And it's like a black, like, piano key looking color. And then the one up from that is a silver tier. And the one up from that is intuitively a gold tier.
Gold.
There were more people that bought the gold tier than bought the silver one. So, we have this like, what's called like the 3 wine strategy, that went into our payment model, where you offer, 3 wine bottles at varying values, but you don't expect people to actually buy, let's say, the middle one. But what you're doing is you're using the other two as price anchors, for figuring out whether they think there's value in the one that you're trying to sell. So for us, I'm trying to sell like the $1 a month thing. But then by having a $5 option and a $10 option, people will see those and think, oh, well, I could probably pay for $5. So damn, that $1 thing, that's a fucking good deal. $10? Yeah, I mean, maybe that too. Maybe I'll pay for that. But that really makes that like $1 thing look good. But then some other people will be like, oh, $10 a month? I'm a baller. Of course I'm gonna pay for that. Give me that gold shit.
Gold.
Yeah. And so
you need a purple one.
Maybe in the future. Some people write some really scathing things after they've made these payments. But often it's because of a misunderstanding. Maybe it's like bad copy that I wrote in the app that doesn't fully communicate the value that they're getting. So they'll go onto the app store and they'll be like, this is a scam. This is bullshit. Don't download this. Fuck this guy. And I have the ability to go and reply only one time, pending a review by Apple to that person. And I'll just, calmly explain, what I think the misunderstanding is or what the delta is. And then, honestly, I know that there's a lot of problems technically and functionally that are in the app because, no piece of software is perfect or complete. So I'll just tell these folks, look, if you want to talk to me about a problem that you're experiencing in the app, email me. Here's my email. Hit me up right now. I'll fix this shit. And so people will follow up with me, and then I'll often, triage something immediately, and ship out an update, and they'll be like, holy shit. Okay. Let me go and fix that review. This went from a 1-star to a 5-star.
Nice. Wow.
So, if you look at that product page on the App Store, you'll see a lot of people that were initially like, this is bullshit. This app sucks. It can burn. And then you'll see me replying some other shit, being like, oh, fuck, you're right. I fucked up. Because often that's the truth. Like it's something that I introduced and I haven't fixed yet because I either wasn't aware of it or, life happened. And if it warrants fixing, then I'll try to fix it. And what will sometimes happen too is people will email me because we have like an option for people to hit me up directly from the app. The moment that thing hits my inbox, I reply to it. I don't wait. I give them, like my first name, and I reply from my own personal email, and I'm like, oh, that problem is related to this. I can either fix it now, or you can wait for like the next thing, or the next version. Or it can, like, luckily sometimes be troubleshooted or troubleshot. What's the past tense of that?
Troubleshoot your shot?
Yeah, something like that. Within the app, because I built in like a troubleshooting thing to help you resolve issues on your own.
I had a problem with this Apple iPhone app, and I got a response from Tim Apple himself. It was amazing.
Yeah, so people
Just imagining some super stoned out guy like in California somewhere.
Tim Apple just emailed me, bro.
Yeah, people normally
He must be doing bong rips with Elon Musk like right now.
Yeah.
And Grimes.
People in Japan often compare me to the other CEO, just because I'm a white guy who has glasses and I tend to wear black.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, ne? No, you're wrong.
You need more turtlenecks.
Yeah, someone thought I was wearing a turtleneck, and I'm like, trust me, this is not a turtleneck. And they're like, no, you're wrong. You're wearing a turtleneck. And I'm like, I don't think you've ever seen a turtleneck in your life.
No turtles were harmed in the creation of this garment.
Yeah, but nobody expects customer service for a $4 app, So when they get it, and they realize that it's me and 2 other people making this thing, often people will see the app and they'll confuse it for a product that like a large team, worked on. But I'm like, no, it's just 3 of us, and I'm the only one that's like developing it now, and I'm getting crushed. So give me some some room here to unfuck myself. And they're like, oh shit, okay, well if it's just you, then clearly you're doing your best. And then they just become like a normal human again, where before it like they were like really looking to like rip me in half.
Let's make sure that Tim Apple can buy plenty of black turtlenecks, you know?
Yeah, give me a fucking break. My neck's cold.
So I guess wrapping things up, the last question I'd have for you, Tim, is do you have any advice for any aspiring developers out there that are maybe looking to make their dream project?
Invest in some cool neck warmers.
Well, I think the thing that if anybody's setting out to do any project, the thing that I'd always beg them to do is evaluate the problem that they're solving first, because often when people are creating something or have the ability to create something, they do what is often referred to as like solutioning, where they're like, oh, I have this set of tools to do something, let me do something with it and see what happens. But instead of saying, I have this problem and I have this tool to solve it, let me solve it, they just have the tool and just start banging out whatever the fuck works. Is often called like a hammer in search of a nail, or a solution in search of a problem. So you can either do something really incredible the first time. I mean, you probably have a better chance of doing it the first time if you start by saying, there is this problem, I've quantified it, I've measured its effect, and I figure that if I do this other thing, then I can reduce that effect, or I can solve that problem and measure it thusly. That I think is there's a lot to doing that. There's like ways of thinking that can help you figure out like where or what the right problem to solve is, and like problems are mostly composed of a series of questions that you've been able to ask that lead to the right thing. That, and then just do that, find the problem before you build the solution. And then later validate that you're actually solving that problem with a solution, and maybe explore as many solutions as you can to make sure that you're using the right one rather than the first one. But beyond that, if you're like building something with software for the first time, or you're learning software, the only real trick there is to just keep going. It's a really like exhausting process, as you've experienced, where you get going with it, and then the working within like a thing that demands you to think logically only, because that's the only language the computer speaks is logic. If you say something to the computer that it disagrees with, and it's an illogical or illegal statement, like the left side does not equal the right side, then it's your shit's not going to work, and it's going to become really exhausting to keep seeing that failed result. But the method of like learning software development is just trying and trying and trying new shit, and eventually getting to the understanding of, how it all works together, what you need to do to make the computer happy. It's always going to tell you true or false. It doesn't have an emotion, luckily. It's a very forgiving machine as long as you are playing by its rules. But it's an exhausting journey to get to the place where you can play within that rule set intuitively. But if you just keep going, then you'll eventually get there.
Great advice from the one and only Tim Apple, the brainchild behind Pocket Rocket, the smash success for iOS. Check it out on the App Store with great reviews on Apple, as well as soon to be coming to Android, I think.
Hell no.
Yeah, fuck Android.
No, I'm just an idiot, and I don't know how to do that stuff.
But thank you so much, Tim, for coming on Tokyo Wave today. It's been very informative. We've learned lots about the wild world of app development, and I think we have finish the conversation today a little bit smarter.
Yeah, thanks
Just
for
a little bit.
thanks for letting me come on. You've been instrumental, specifically Parker, in allowing all this stuff to happen. So, kochira koso arigato. Thank you mostly.
And thank you for making such an awesome app.
Yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.